It's 8:52 here in New York. I'm Bryant Gumbel. We understand that there has been a plane crash on the southern tip of Manhattan. You're looking at the World Trade Center. We understand that a plane has crashed into the World Trade Center. We don't know anything more than that. We don't know if it was a commercial aircraft. We don't know if it was a private aircraft. We have no idea how many were on board or what the extent of the injuries are right now.
See the plume of smoke behind it, which we will assume until we're told otherwise that that's the fire at the Pentagon. I believe that's correct as you look now at Washington.
It's 7:59 a.m., September 11, 2001. A loud, busy, casual morning in New York City. American Airlines Flight 11, with 92 people aboard, takes off from Boston's Logan International Airport headed to Los Angeles. At 8:14 a.m., United Airlines Flight 175 also takes off from Boston. It too is headed for Los Angeles. But these ordinary flights took an unusual turn. At 8:46 a.m., Flight 11, loaded with 20,000 gallons of jet fuel, crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center, instantly killing hundreds and trapping many on the building's higher floors. 18 minutes later, at 9:03, a second plane, United Airlines Flight 175, appeared out of the sky and turned sharply toward the South Trade Center, smashing into the South Tower. Millions watched the horrific events unfold. Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., American Airlines Flight 77 circled downtown Washington and crashed into the west side of the Pentagon military headquarters at 9:45 a.m. Soon after, the situation in New York took a devastating turn for the worst as the South Tower of the World Trade Center collapsed and a massive cloud of dust and smoke swept over the city at 9:59. The North Tower crashed into the city at 10:28. The nation's traffic controllers knew the United States was under attack and began a frantic attempt to wrest back control of the skies above America.
It's 8:42. Flight 93 takes off from Newark International Airport, delayed roughly 45 minutes due to air traffic. The plane, carrying less than half maximum capacity, had 7 crew members and 33 passengers aboard. On the flight were 4 hijackers, who had successfully carried knives and box cutters onto the plane. At the time, knives were allowed onto planes if the blade was 4 inches or less. The plane's late departure had disrupted the terrorist plan for launching their attack. At 9:28, they received their last contact with Flight 93. At 9:30, the controller began to poll the other flights on his frequency to see if anyone else had heard screaming. Several said they had. At 9:32, a third transmission came over this frequency. The unknown person in the cockpit said, "Keep remaining sitting, we have a bomb aboard." At 9:34, Cleveland Center had reported to the FAA that they had a suspicion of a bomb aboard Flight 93. By the time the information of Flight 93 had been received, 2 of the 4 hijacked planes had already carried out their missions. At 30 minutes into the flight, in 10:07 a.m., the passengers aboard Flight 93 found out their plane was under terrorist control and started to contact loved ones. They were soon notified about the recent terror attacks in New York. Quickly, the passengers and crew started to connect the dots and formed a plan.
Though it's widely acknowledged the passengers in Flight 93 saved countless lives when they crashed the plane, it's certain they saved 2 lives, the lives of Heather Penny and Mark Sassville. Major Heather Lucky Penny, at 25 years old, was a new first lieutenant serving as a training officer for the 121st Fighting Squadron for the District of Columbia Air National Guard based at Andrews Air Force Base outside of Washington, D.C. She and Colonel Mark Sassville were given the mission to take down Flight 93. The plan was for them to come from opposite directions and for one of them to fly into the front of the plane and the other into the rear. Major Heather Penny was a 3rd generation who was raised with planes because her dad was a retired Air Force colonel. Major Heather Penny had mixed feelings among the rest of America as the tragedies of 9/11 unwound. In her interview, she stated that she was not scared for her life, she was scared for her mission. She was very determined to get her mission carried out right, knowing all the lives at stake. Major Penny said that the fact she was young and single with no kids played a role into choosing the participants of the mission. The plan, she said, was the only feasible option, even though it was a suicide mission. Penny had no time to make any calls when the assignment was given. She said she grabbed her gear and went. In her interview, she told us,
"Anybody who had been in my position would have been willing to do the exact same thing. And frankly, as I said to you, as far as how could you do a mission failure? The real heroes were the passengers on Flight 93.
Todd Beamer, age 32, died on September 11, 2001. At 10:03 a.m., Todd Beamer and other passengers on Flight 93 decided to take action against the hijackers after suspicions were proven by the recent tragic crashes in New York City and Washington, D.C. Suspicions were proven by a number of phone calls between passengers, family, friends, and other loved ones. One of those phone calls was to Todd's wife, Lisa. She told him about the attacks on the Twin Towers. It became clear to Todd what was going to happen to the plane. After Beamer got off the phone with his wife, who was at home with their children, Drew and Morgan, he and a few other passengers had the same information and similar thoughts. The passengers then started to form a plan. The plan was to distract the guy with the bomb and get to the cockpit to stop the plane from reaching its new destination. Todd Beamer and other passengers stormed the cockpit.
On the fateful day of 9/11, flight attendant Sandy Wall Bradshaw called her husband Phil, who was at home with their 3 kids, a daughter Alexandria, a son Nathan, and a stepdaughter named Shannon. She asked him if he had heard about the hijackings, as well as to inform him her plane had been hijacked. She said the plane has been taken over by 3 men with knives. I got a close look at one of them sitting in the back row first class. He has an Islamic look. They put most of us in the rear of the plane, but are keeping a few in first class. We're all back here getting hot water together and getting ready to take over the plane. They then exchanged I love yous and goodbyes, knowing it was probably the last conversation they would ever have. Sandy Bradshaw died a hero and was one of the 2 brave flight attendants who threw coffee pots of boiling water at the hijackers, helping the other passengers successfully take back the plane.
The heroic passengers of Flight 93 gave up their lives for countless others. The target of the attack was assumed to be the White House in Washington, D.C. There is no estimate of how many casualties and countless lives would have been taken if the passengers aboard Flight 93 wouldn't have taken back the plane. The passengers of Flight 93 not only interpreted and figured out the situation at hand, they also analyzed and constructed a plan to take down or control the plane before the hijackers' mission was underway. Uncertain of what might happen, they still knew there was almost no chance of them surviving. Their plan was to distract the man keeping the hostages so they could storm the cockpit and take back control of the plane. The hijackers took the plane down because of the attempt by the passengers. The plane was crashed in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, roughly 20 minutes flying time from the assumed target, Washington, D.C. The passengers aboard Flight 93 were brave and courageous despite the unfortunate events happening in the United States. They still carried out their plan. The passengers of Flight 93 acted as a symbol of hope in a time of darkness. This served as a call out into the depression that arose over America in its time of fear and panic. Todd Beamer inspired his fellow passengers aboard Flight 93 to take back the plane and save the lives of hundreds.
Sandy Bradshaw faced death to spare the people below.
Major Heather Penny and Colonel Sassville were willing to die to protect their country.
The first responders of the 9/11 attacks ran into crumbling buildings to save people they didn't know.
These are just a few of the people who stood up and helped others on the fateful day of 9/11, and not one of them hesitated. They stood up for their country and saved thousands of lives because it was right. And although 9/11 was a shattering and devastating day, it was also a day for heroes who rose out of the ashes and stood up for America.